Welcome back. Thank you for listening to our sponsors. Again, this is Let's Chew the Gum, the podcast where we talk about everything from A to Z. You can always find us here on the platform where you're listening now, or any platform where fine podcasts are downloaded. Today, we are talking about going back to school with COVID.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast also with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Districts across the state, even states, all have different policies that they set for education. So it's not the same everywhere. And within each state, at least in California, districts have the power to set policy, board policy. So it varies by district. So let's talk about that. What are your thoughts about teachers being mandated that they are vaccinated? Laura, was that?
Go ahead. Well, I'm totally against the mandate. I don't know how you can be in a union and you can mandate such things to be taking place. How are you going to force anyone to take a vaccination? It's to each his own. There are many beliefs out there regarding COVID, and and people feel that there are many other ways that you can take with this instead of taking that vaccination. So
right.
I don't understand how that will flow. And you're going to look at a shortage of teachers because there are teachers who just aren't going to take the vaccination,
Absolutely.
So if you're saying that you vaccinated or you don't work, I don't think that they'll be the ones hurting because a lot of people are still working from home. So, I mean, at least they'll be able to find a job doing something else. But then we'll be stuck with trying to get enough teachers in the building to support the children that we have.
Another issue. Go ahead, Deja, and speak to that. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. She said it perfectly. That was what I had saw that on the news a couple of times. That they were thinking about mandating the whole vaccination thing, and that was my whole topic of it. There's a lot of different ways to go about this whole pandemic thing other than to make people take mandatory vaccinations, and then especially with it's not really protecting you from the virus like 100%. Is just to help your chances and make it better if you do come in contact with it. I'm not really sure why they would need to mandate them to do that.
Right. I've seen over the last week or so different areas where they are mandating vaccinations. If you want to return to campus, some of the colleges, I don't know if they were the state colleges or private colleges. I believe it was a state college. If you wanted to return on campus, you had to be vaccinated. It's difficult because there are some people whose biological makeup may make it difficult for them to be vaccinated. Some people have allergic reactions to vaccination. Some people are concerned because some people have been vaccinated and have passed away just from that process. And I can't foresee, like Laura said, any union or any bargaining unit that would where members would vote for mandated vaccinations. That's something where we have to protect everyone, but there are other options. One of you brought up the idea of teachers still working from home. I know in my district that is not an offering. As a matter of fact, I took leave last year because there wasn't any accommodations made for me to continue to teach virtually. And there are no accommodations being made for that this year. So I'll be back in the classroom, and I'll have my precautions. I have my little bubble that I want to teach from, and the filtration systems. But with something like a deadly virus, I don't know if there's any precautions we can take aside from isolation and following those guidelines where we would be completely safe. It's so tricky, and like Justin was saying earlier, it's a day by day almost basis. It's like a wait and see, and I do feel personally like it's a petri dish. There are a lot of people who are. Go ahead, Justin.
I was just saying that was kind of shocking to me. They're not offering it to you.
No, they have in my district they have an offering for independent study teachers, but it's only for the elementary level students. Now, but I know that there has to be some accommodations made for students that are not returning, even at the high school level. And I don't know what determinations have been made as far as who's going to instruct those students that don't return. What happens if you have students that contract the virus, and you have or several that decide, hey, we're not coming back to this situation. Right. So it's a wait and see game.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I think at me as a parent, those are the things that I be wanting to know. Like, how are y'all making y'all decisions? Is it the hospital statistics on who's getting it, how many people's getting it that month, or how many people gonna be in these classrooms, or how y'all gonna be able to set standards or guidelines for the school year? I just want to know what's going on in them board meetings, the big ones.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think I was talking last week to my a few teachers, and I was mentioning to them that parents have a very big and can have a very big influence over what happens within the districts. But it's going to take parents to show up to those meetings, right? You do have access to those meetings. So when parents talk, they listen, especially for board members, because let's face it, they're elected positions, at least for the most part that I know. I don't know if any go by appointment aside from filling a vacancy, but these are elected positions. And if, just like anyone who's an elected official, if they aren't doing the will of the people, then it's the people's duty to remove them. And so parents need to be vocal about these topics wherever they can, whenever they can, whether it's at the board meeting or the city council meeting or for state elections, etc., to make sure that the things that they want are happening. And I don't know if all parents feel empowered. I know there are some areas in school districts where it's I don't want to say how can I put it? It's not that they undermine parents' power, but maybe the parents are not always informed. It's like, if you know, then you know, but we're not going to tell you have this power. We aren't going to go out and invite you always to the board meetings.
Right. What I think it's a influence thing, just like you say with the variable being the kid, and you got parents at home teaching them something, and then they come into the classroom or into the school and they got about 30 other adults teaching them either the same thing, or like my mom said and you said, certain teachers not, going by those guidelines. There's just so much of an influence that these kids can eventually turn around and figure it out on their own, or do something that they want to do.
Right. Right. Someone brought up the daycare for younger kids earlier in the conversation. Last week, a couple of the teachers brought up the idea of, what about the parents, right, that have been they've readjusted their schedules to where from last year to where they have their students at home. Maybe they've changed job hours, work hours, etc. Or these parents don't want their kids to go back to school, or whatever the situation may be. But what I'm getting at is, what type of considerations or concerns parents may have about their own kids, right? And in particular, this came up about teachers who are also parents, and teachers who have to go back into the classroom, but then they don't want their students to go back, and then they don't have daycare. But so that can apply to a lot of people. This issue of daycare or childcare at home, what are parents going to do in those situations? Do you guys have any concerns about that as far as securing daycare for your kids if you aren't sending them back, or changing job schedules, etc.? Any concerns about that?
I would say that it takes a village.
Look at that.
I would say that it takes a village right now. Right, and some people don't have that village. And right now, as far as daycares, they're overworked and underpaid from what I've heard from daycare providers, and especially as far as the school agers go. A lot of daycares here are eliminating school agers starting next year because it just got so much for them. It's overwhelming. The half on, half off. But we're responsible for homework and the after school work and the in class work when they're on the tablets or the laptops the days that they're not in school. So right now, daycare is a huge concern if you don't have that village. If you are a single mother or a single father, and you just have you, and you can't like alternate shifts or have someone to watch them if you work third, it's a big thing right now. Because some daycare providers are just tired and they're doing the bare minimum, or they're not going to do it at all.
Wow. Anyone else want to speak to that?
Well, that also goes to for those parents who don't want their children in the school, don't want the children in the school. So we have in Cincinnati what we call Cincinnati Digital Academy for Cincinnati Public Schools. So if those parents don't want their kids to come back, they can enroll their kids in Cincinnati Digital Academy. However, those parents still have to work. Mm-hmm. So then you go back into that. Okay, if I put my kids and enroll them in Cincinnati Digital Academy, and then I still have to work, those school hours, I still need someone to watch over them.
Right.
So you run into the risk of high schoolers or middle schoolers watching their younger siblings doing those school hours.
Right.
And they're not, and they're not equipped to do that. They're trying to do their work, and and they're trying to watch a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, or Mm-hmm. So it's just all around just inconvenience.
We saw that a lot last year, and I'm speaking from a teacher perspective of, and I have seniors in high school. We saw a lot of it where we're online doing teaching, but they're aren't fully engaged, not because they don't want to, but they're helping other siblings with homework or changing the diaper or having to cook a meal. And some students would be on the Zoom in their kitchen, and you see that they're cooking and they're trying, they're doing their best. And it's not easy for anyone. I don't want to paint a picture that someone has more responsibilities than others, and like someone said, it takes a village, and that includes the districts and the teaching staff and faculty. I would just hope that everyone is considerate of everyone else, and that we find ways to navigate this because this is still unprecedented. We went through the first year, we're halfway through the second year, and I don't think anyone really has all the answers, and maybe no one has to, but together, if we're listening to each other and listening to concerns, and like Justin said, in those meetings behind the doors, if they're really considering input from others to make those decisions. I know, again, in Laura's case, she said, we haven't had any really directives yet because of the transition of superintendents. Well, who steps in those voids? If the superintendent contracts COVID and is not coming back or whatever, who is there? So we need to have systems in place. And I know it's new, but we did have a whole year last year to kind of, practice and go through some protocols. And I don't know if everyone left for summer break and didn't, think about it and prepare, but we still obviously have a lot of work to do and some decisions that are going to continually be made. And I imagine that we'll hear a lot in the news over the next month or so as schools continue to, bring their students back in various fashions. And we'll have data to look at from places where, they don't have mask enforcement versus others. But ultimately, I think it's about the preservation of life, the protection of those, again, not just those that are going to schools, but the families we love so dearly that are at home.
Yeah, but also it was such a frustrating year and a half to 2 years for, parents, because they're making a decision. Okay, we're starting school full-fledged. Okay, now you're going to go home and you're going to do blended. Okay, after Christmas, you're going to come back a week on and a week off. It's like, make the decision. Either you're going to be in or you're going to be blended or you're going to be all remote. Just make the decision beforehand versus keep going back and forth, because that's frustrating for the parents. I don't even have children in school. I mean, I have grandchildren, but they're little daycare kids in 6 and 7, so they're like kindergarten, first grade. But the thing of it is to constantly do that. And I don't think when they were making those decisions that they even had the parents, took them into consideration at all. When those are our stakeholders, those are the people that we're serving, because we're serving their children. And so those are the people we should have taken into consideration when we're talking about either going remote or going blended or going, full-fledged. And because Deasia and Justin had to figure out, go pick up their daughter from school to take her to daycare. Then somebody had to make sure that they were on their lunch break, and that's just too much, because the daycare wasn't transporting kids.
Multiply that by I don't know how many millions. Go ahead.
It was hard. It was definitely very, very hard. And it's like everybody takes these precautions, and you kind of question if they're precautions or if they're just making their jobs a little bit easier to just like end it. Because that's exactly how it was. It'll be like, okay, we're going to go to digital all the way. And we will be like, all right, well, on my lunch break, we'll take her to Grammy, or when Grammy gets off, we'll just take her to Grammy. And then it just changed. Okay, now they're going to be at school, but only from 9 to 2:30. So it's like, okay, well, work starts at 7 or 8 for most adults. And if they work third shift, it ends at 6 or 7. So you basically want them to come to school, and then you want the parents to get no sleep to make sure they get them and take them where they need to be before they go back. So it's like it's very stressful. It was a very stressful year, and all you can do is kind of like roll with the punches and keep up with it, because like Justin said, it's just like a trial basis. They just do it and see how it works, and if not, they switch it to what they feel is better.
Yeah, it's especially difficult, and it's and that's why I wanted to get the parents' perspective. So I know I have a lot of audience members who will listen to this, and they're going to relate, because they're parents and they're going through the same thing, or they have been. And I was saying, multiply what you guys are saying by millions of families that are doing this, and it's it's stressful in and of itself. And it's not as if parents, you have to work. And every job is not as flexible as the schools are trying to be. And so, like you said, make the decision or not the decision, and then on the students that you have, the student family, you're maybe got set in a routine of this is how it's going, and now it's changed. What does that do for student learning and their abilities? I know at the end of last year, many schools decided we're going back, and we went back, with a month to go, which was kind of odd. It was like maybe we just finish off the year in the format that we are, so it would be better for students. But I don't have all the answers, but I do feel all of the frustrations from parents and teachers and really everyone involved. But it seems like sometimes there are people that are making decisions, oftentimes that don't have to live with the consequences of those decisions in terms of it doesn't affect their family, or they don't have school age children, or they are not involved in school in any way, but they make the decision for others. And then add to it the social class disparities. All right. There are some students who possibly in families that went through the pandemic, no issues at all with distance learning. They were well versed in technology. They had all the access that they needed, at home. They did not have an issue with getting daycare because maybe they had funding or money to do that. And then I've had families where, there are 3 and 4 families living in one trailer home, and they're trying to all access and coordinate schedules. And it's really difficult to have these one-size-fits-all policies. And I think I know for sure that we can do better.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, just to piggyback, when you're talking about we went back to school for a month, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking we just went back to school so those kids can take state tests to get some data, which is very invalid because all the students didn't receive the academics that they needed during this pandemic. So we went back to school, and what did we do? We went back to school. We instantly went into state testing. We went back to school. We went instantly into state testing. And then what? State testing took anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So 4 to 6 weeks, we were out of school. Like that was up to the end. So was it because in the state of Ohio they were waiving the state testing this year because they waived it the year before. So it doesn't matter if you waived it or not. Your scores are going to be invalid because all the kids didn't receive what they needed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why are we doing that? And then again, you have these people making these decisions, and why not make them according to, for instance, high schoolers? Most high schoolers are independent. So if you're going to do anything, how about making them remote and spread elementary teachers and the elementary students across the district? Mm-hmm. Put some of your middle schoolers in your elementary schools within your high schools that's in that same area and go from there. But they don't ask the little people.
Well, remind me when you're running for superintendent so I can, build the support for you, because, those are, it seems, it's like my mom used to say, that sounds too much like right. It's too much like right. That's too right. But I when you said the state testing, it didn't even occur to me last year, but when we went back, that was exactly what happened here. The first conversation was, here's what's happening for state testing when we went back. And that's what it was, as invalid as those scores were. But I tell you what, there definitely are some people who have an interest, financial interest in that, because they get to sell the test and they make the test. So, that's a topic we could have on an entirely different show. But it didn't.
And people children and how like the children and it just being, children thrive off like consistency. And so do parents.
Yes.
Like you get a routine in your house, and that's usually how it goes. These children and their behavior, I'm sure, hasn't been the best, and they can't be focused because there's no consistency in anything that they're doing right now. They don't know what's going to happen from day to day either, so they're not into it because they never have a plan that they know is going on. Usually at the beginning of the year, they give a kid a syllabus, or what's going on week by week, or even day by day. You would know something. They haven't been letting these children know anything. So they're just winging it. And when children that need structure doesn't have it, then behavior issues happen. They can't really pass, or they don't really have the information they need to take those tests that they're making them take the last 4 to 6 weeks.
That's a very great point. The consistency, for sure. That's a great point, and especially when you have students that are on the spectrum, it's a whole mess. It's a whole mess, and
yeah, but not. And also, just to piggyback off of that, when you think about the kids not knowing what to do, what's going to happen day to day. I don't know about you, Dr. K, but there are times when I don't know what's happening day to day, hour to hour, minute by minute.
Sure.
It's just falling on you too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, you'll get a email or a message that this is what's happening, and by the night it's like, wait a minute, that's not what's happening, and I know. So it's like call me when you figure it out. Don't it seems like individuals in leadership sometimes want to say something for the sake of saying something, right? We don't want to just have silence. We want to say something, but they haven't figured it out. So they'll say a little bit, but then it changes. And yeah, so I've kind of gotten accustomed to just, what, let me know when we get there, and I'll do the part I need to do. But at the same time, being very participatory in trying to help the process along. I want to be a part of the solution. And I know a lot of parents do, but those in leadership have to listen, right? They're looking for solutions. And oftentimes, like you guys brought up a lot of great points that I would hope leadership would listen to. Some people I know in leadership, they feel threatened by the existence of others that have maybe suggestions that I don't want to say are better than theirs, but maybe they didn't think of it. But I think good leadership is about surrounding yourself with people that have great ideas and that can help the team go along. It's not about individual glory or, I came up with the idea. This is a worldwide pandemic. It's a human event, and we need everybody on board and on deck. And it really is time to call upon the village to help make these decisions. Because, again, when you're making decisions that affect millions, and you haven't considered them, you're making decisions about yourself and your thoughts, and that's not cool in a public school setting.
Yeah, they make it seem like it's a social experiment the way y'all explain it.
It feels like that. It feels like a social experiment, and I for one am not willing to be a part of it. So I'm going to do the best that I can and all that I can, obviously, to protect myself, which in turn is about protecting my family at home. And then protecting my students. I miss my students. When I was out last year, it was difficult for me to not go back. That's an important part of my life, and teachers, we're an important part of students' lives, and I care so much for them. And for me to have to make the decision about, am I choosing the students that I care so much about and I'm helping to develop it and helping them with, their trauma and issues that they have. And sometimes I'm the only sane adult that they talk to, or the only adult that they talk to in a day, besides other teachers. So making that decision, them versus my health, it was tough, and it was a lasting toughness. I didn't do well with that, but ultimately I had to choose myself and my family, and so I hope that everyone listening is doing their part to just consider that. In any situation, there are others that are not in the situation that you are. We all need to, look out for one another and just be considerate that other people have different things going on. And if you have it going on, then maybe lend a hand to someone that doesn't.
Right. Another thing we need to definitely think about is, not to put it all on the school leaders, but you're telling us to go back in these buildings, and I don't know how your school custodians are, but I don't think they were doing a great job before COVID. And I think it needs to be reiterated, and emphasize the importance of really, even if you have to bring in more custodians into the buildings, something needs to be done to make sure that the cleaning precautions are taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And I got into when I Well, I started in education as a custodian, and I remember taking that as a serious responsibility because I'm cleaning up. I'm in an elementary school, so in the restrooms and kids vomiting or whatever it may be. But the idea of knowing that my job is just as important when I was a custodian as teachers and everyone else, because the safety and cleanliness of the place. And with COVID, I know many custodians were overworked. Right. Already, I know when I was a custodian, I had, one person for half of the campus. That was a lot. And you had to do it in a certain time. And so I could imagine custodians being overworked, doing all they can and caring about students, I hope, but now having to do it 2 and 3 times as much. So perhaps every school should take heed and think about hiring additional custodial staff. And I've always been, since I was a teacher, the kind to make sure I clean my room also in addition, or having a good relationship with the custodians to make sure that they, understood the target areas in my classroom that needed attention. But yeah, that's a great point. So let's make sure we pay custodians also, give them a raise too, hire more or whatever we have to do. Quite a few states have received funding and resources. Districts have funding and resources for COVID. Oftentimes, districts will hold on to the money for a rainy day or whatever, but it's time to put those resources into play for the safety of the families, especially since we're opening up for the most part during COVID. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity if you want to have a last say or ending point that you want to make before we end this show. And I'll start with Laura. And if any of you don't have any last words, that's fine as well.
Well, I just want to thank you for having us on this time. But I too have a podcast. It's called The Sky Falls, and it's in conjunction with my book called The Sky Falls Twice. So if you guys haven't checked it out, go out there and check it out. My podcast is on Sundays from 4 p.m. every fourth Sunday of the month. So we'll be picking it back up in September. But again, I just want everyone to be safe out there and take in consideration the teachers, as they are also in there, being essential workers and taking the risk like the medical field. So if you are sending your children back to school, just please take the precautions to keep them safe, as well as the adults in the building.
Thank you for that. Deasia or Justin, any final thoughts?
We both have a few. Just a prayer for the teachers and the students and themselves, because they are, out there. Just if the parents could send them to school with like their own personal hand sanitizer and things like that, and let the children know how important it is to stay clean and stay distant, even at home. Just keep practicing that would make everyone a lot safer.
I just want to say thank you for having me on, having everybody on. I want to tell everybody be safe this year. Thank you to everybody doing their part, from the teachers to the medical field workers to everybody, the public transportation people. Just everybody take care of themselves and their family and be safe out there this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you all. I want to thank you all for agreeing to come on to the show and sharing your thoughts and insights. I'm sure that our listeners will benefit. I definitely benefited from this experience. So I appreciate you so much. And to my audience that's tuning in, just a shout out to all of you. You guys, we have listeners in over 38 countries, and I appreciate all of you. You guys be sure to check out Laura's podcast, The Sky Falls, and also to get that book, The Sky Falls Twice. Her podcast comes out, as she said, the fourth Sunday of every month. It'll be picked back up in September, so we look forward to that. Continue to tune in. You guys stay safe as we go back to school with COVID. And remember, we always have
something for your